Hey, welcome to my channel, and my name is Paul K. I'm on the banks of the beautiful Cape Cod Canal, and I'm going to try to do an instructional video aimed at beginners for fishing the Cape Cod Canal in Massachusetts. World-class striped bass fishery amongst all the other species too, but mostly guys come down here for striped bass. And this is going to be an instructional tutorial aimed at beginners, but there's going to be tips in here that experienced anglers are totally going to love too. And the idea is to show people how to bait fish. That's what I'm concentrating on here. I'm going to do many other videos, hunting and fishing, and right now we're going to be bait fishing at the Cape Cod Canal aimed at beginners. The reason why I chose to do a tutorial on bait fishing is because bait fishing beats everything. Saltwater, freshwater, you got your lures. You want to be a new time person coming down to the Cape Cod Canal, or you're an experienced person who just wants to catch a striper, bait beats everything, 100%. All the fly fishermen and lure fishermen and all that, they all catch their fish and they all have their time. Bait beats everything. So we'll give a little history on the Cape Cod Canal. This was dug as a cut through so that people don't have to go around the arm of the Cape to get into Boston Harbor. Around early 1900s, an entrepreneur started it, and he fell through for some reason, money-wise or something. He never completed it. The Army Corps of Engineers picked it up off of him, and they completed it. It's approximately 7 miles from one end to the other, from Buzzards Bay to Cape Cod Bay. That way being, I'm on the Cape Cod side, so in this direction this is west, and in that direction that's east. That's Sandwich, Cape Cod Bay, and this is Buzzards Bay. And tides come through 4 times a day, of course, just like anywhere else in the world, and they're very important in fishing the Cape Cod Canal. As an instructional video, you might want to watch this many times, because I'm going to shoot a lot of information over that I've gained over the decades, and I'll cover a lot of ground, so hope you like it. So the Army Corps of Engineers picked this up and finished it. It's very deep here in certain areas, and I guess it's 40 to 60 feet. There's holes, some holes 60 feet. Fish need 3 things to be attracted to a certain place: freshwater or saltwater, current, bait, and structure. If you remove one of those, the fish probably most likely ain't gonna be there. So this has everything. There's structure. These boulders that you see go all the way down to the bottom. There's everything in the bottom there too. There's sunken ships and just all kinds of stuff on the bottom there. All kinds of structure, holes where fish can totally take refuge, hide in the holes, rest in the holes, and then the current gets really strong here at certain moon tides, and they just sit in the holes, and the bait comes by over them, and they dash up out of the hole and grab the bait. That's one way that they feed, and there's plenty of structure here for that. Bait is always coming through here in spurts, and sometimes they hang out for a long time, so you got the bait, and the current's here. It's 4 times a day. 4 times a day is also a time called slack tide, which is the time that the current stops and switches to the next direction, and that's, for a beginner, the best time to fish bait, because the current is not moving and dragging your line either to the left or the right. Now, the one thing that I really want to get into beginners is that there's rules and protocol here at the Cape Cod Canal, and it's all about respect. And this is 7 miles long. It's about 500 feet across, and there's plenty of room. If you're going to come down here and bait fish, make sure there's no one near you. I have one rod out now, and you see the current is heading west, and that line goes out. Because I cast it out, the current has carried the line out, 50 yards, 60 yards away from directly in front of me. That's taking up a lot of real estate. So when you're bait fishing anywhere in the canal, bear in mind that the thing that you want to keep is distance. You want to respect other anglers, and if you look for, there's plenty of room here. Look for spots that don't have any other fishermen, and that way you won't take up their real estate, and then you won't get angry. Fishermen that do this won't have any problem. Just if you're bait fishing, look for an area where there's no other people. Don't go down there right next to someone and throw out your line, because you're just going to get fouling other lines, and just stay away from other people. The fish are schooling fish. They're moving up and down through here, and sometimes just passing through. Sometimes they're camped out here feeding on bait. So you got to find a spot where you have at least 75, 100 yards on either side of you. During the major migrations, it's elbow to elbow here. I wouldn't recommend bait fishing unless you can find a hole to work your rods in, to fit yourself in. But under any circumstances, don't set up to anybody, next to anybody. You got to give them room, because you're just there's gonna be problems, and you're not gonna have a good time. They're not gonna have a good time. And most guys down here have no problem enforcing the rules. So. They've been doing it for a long time, or some of them haven't been doing it wrong. But right is right. Just don't do it near other people. That's because of the nature of this type of fishing that I'm going to explain. So let's start explaining how this works. First thing you want to do when you set up, you need these spikes. You can make them yourself. It's just PVC spike, about 3.5, 4 feet long. Cut one end at an angle so that it digs in. Not only can you use it here at the canal, but you can use them anywhere to fish for. And the reason why you really want these is, as a beginner, you're first going to come down here with a nice rod and reel, maybe, or you could have a junker, but you're going to jam it in the rocks, and when stripers or bluefish hit, they hit hard. That rod, there's no mistaking when you get a hit, that rod just doubles over, and you're going to just ruin your rod. You might end up getting pulled away out into the canal and lose your rod. So you have to use the spikes. You don't have to, but it's 90% recommended that you use the spikes. When you first come down in here, you want to set your spikes, very, very important, solidly in the rocks. So when you get that slamming hit, that rod is going to stay lodged in the rocks. See how I have them? I thought there's a way of explaining all this and doing this instructional video in a room, but I figure I'll come down here. It's a lot easier for me to show you guys how to do it. Just show you. So that rod is wedged in there. It's solid. It ain't going nowhere. And especially if you have pricey equipment, you don't want it going anywhere. So you set up your spikes in there. So now I'm going to talk about rods and reels. And so this is 500 feet across. The rule of the canal generally is, no matter which side of the canal you pick to fish on, the fish will be breaking on the other side without further than you can cast. But that, having said that, you want a rod and reel setup that is capable of landing fish in this current and strong enough and able to cast far. You want to be able to cast far in case there are breaking fish here, or you just want to put the thing out when you're bait fishing out there. The fish generally, for the most part, most of the fish are down deep, so you want to be able to cast out far. The middle is the deepest generally. That's a generalization, and you want to be able to get out to the middle. So you come up here with at least an 11-foot rod for a casting setup. And if you'll notice, I have two styles of rods with me today. One is a spinning 11-foot, and the second is a casting rod with, I believe that's a 9-foot rod. There are two styles of rods, and they're both excellent for bait fishing here, as well as, the reason why I have two is this style spinning rod, you can cast lures also in case the fish start breaking up on top. The bait fishing obviously is going to be all on the bottom. So this style of rod, it's a conventional reel, and you are casting, the weight of the rig that you're using, the sinker and the line is pulling the line off the reel. So you generally use a heavier weight when casting this type of reel. The reason why this reel is the optimum bait fishing setup is because that thing is a winch that has got so much power. Now you got to bear in mind, sometimes these currents are really cranking around the new moon and the full moon. So not only do you have to fight a striper, by the way, stripers move in this current like it's nothing. It's nothing to them. In the fastest current, they just zip through it like butter. So they have no problem maneuvering. And you have to have a rod and reel setup that's strong enough to land 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, whatever God wants to bless you with fish, and fighting against the current. So that's why these rods are so stout. This particular line and leader setup on all my rods and reels for the canal, generally I'll use 40-pound braid. This is braided line, that as the main line. There's backing in back of this. This stuff's expensive, and you don't need 300 yards of braid. You'll never use the bottom end, the end that's inside in here. So you put backing first. I use 50-pound mono backing. Tie that to the 40-pound. This is the money stuff. 40-pound braid. And on the leader, which is the clear part, let me show you what a leader looks like. This is the leader. This line, this clear line, I hope you can see that, is called the leader. That's attached to the braid. That's about a 7 or 8 foot that I used. And then on the bottom for bait fishing, I use, this is called a sinker slider rig. That main line runs through that white slip and is attached finally to a swivel. And then I like using 10-aught circle hooks. Well, I don't like using them, that's the law. If you're going to use bait in Massachusetts, you have to have a circle hook. A true circle hook, that point of that hook is pointing directly at the shank. It cannot be offset. These are commercial hooks. They're just, you can't wear these out. They don't rust. And I found them at, bought tons of them at a hunt and fishing exposition, and but they sell them anywhere. Bass Pro or any bait shop will sell the circle hooks, but they have to be circle hooks. And the idea between a circle hook is that the fish will swallow the bait, and as he swims away, this circle part will catch on the corner of his mouth and won't harm the fish. And it's much better for you to be able to release the fish when he's only hooked in the corner of the mouth, as opposed to J hooks that the fish swallows the bait and he gets hooked in the stomach, and then you can't release the fish unharmed. That fish is gonna get hurt in the least, or he's gonna be bleeding and he's gonna die. But so that's the setup. It's 40-pound braid. Well, first it's backing, then 40-pound braid, then a 30-pound leader, and then my swivel, and then my hook. And the reason for that is the 40-pound braid is the main part of the line, your main strength. If you get snagged on a rock here, which you'll get a snag, you want the leader of only 30 pounds to break before the 40-pound will break. That way you'll only lose your leader and your main line will stay intact, so you can just tie another leader on, that's all. Speaking of breaking line and snags, when you're bait fishing here, everyone's terrified. The main reason to bait fish at the canal is the current's cranking along, you're throwing a weight out there with bait, it's going to drift with the current, and then it's going to stop eventually, and then when everyone thinks that you're going to get snagged every single time, and there goes you. As a beginner, you're going to do that, but you'll learn how to, with practice, maybe 1 or 2 sessions out, when the line is stopped and you want to reel in, you start reeling in immediately. You pop the weight off the bottom and don't stop reeling. That's the main key. Don't stop reeling. You're going to have seaweed on it and whatever. That's not a problem. It's pull the seaweed off when you get it up here. But when you reel the line in, you start reeling it. You pop imagine that the weight is on the bottom. You pop the rod so that it lifts the weight off and your rig off the bottom, and don't stop reeling. Just reel like crazy and you'll get the thing in. And after a while, I go out here, 6, 8, 10-hour sessions, and I don't lose a rig for 8 or 10 sessions. You get used to it. You really do. It's not rocket science. You'll figure it out. And there are certain times that you're gonna get snagged and you're not going to get your rig back, but that's the game of fishing. I mean, the price you got to pay to fight these sports fish, this is the thrill. These fish are so strong in this current. And speaking of that, by the way, this is a world-class fishery here. No other place on the East Coast is like this structure of this canal, and what attracts striped bass to this place. What attracts them is there are two major migrations, one in the spring and one in the fall. And the fish in the spring come up the coast, and rather than go around the arm of Cape Cod, they cut through the canal. And that window of 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks that they come through here, no other place. It's a funnel. They're all passing through, heading north, coming up from the south, coming through in this direction, and they take a left at the end of the canal. The major biomass does, and they just keep heading north, following the bait and the water temperature. So, and in the fall, it's just the opposite. They migrate from the north, come back down. These fish move mostly, that I've found, mostly with the tides. So in the spring, the tides that you want to go, the tides that are heading east, you want to concentrate on fishing those, because the fish move with the tides. When that current's easier for them to swim through rather than fighting the current. That's a general rule, but I find that pretty much to be true. And then in the fall, conversely, the tides that are heading west, the tides that are going in that direction, they're heading back down to their winter quarters down in Chesapeake Bay and so forth. So to get back to the rod setup, so on this one, I have the conventional reel with an ugly stick, very reasonably priced, and this will get the job done for you if you like conventional. Everyone's kind of afraid of these, but in 3 hours you'll have the hang of it. It's called getting an educated casting. And the reason why these are by far preferred is that thing is a winch. That has got pure power. If I ever, God blesses me with catching an 80-pound fish, I hope to God it's on that rod and reel, because that thing is going to land anything that this canal has to offer aside from a giant tuna. And then on the spinning side, the setup here, you don't have to get expensive rods and reels here. If you're only going to fish here for a day or two or a week, but if you want to take this seriously, you might invest in a more morning. How you doing? In a more expensive rod and reel. But I choose an 11-foot spinning rod and a spinning reel. This is you don't have to buy an expensive reel. You'll see a lot of these. It's called the Van Staal reel down at the canal here, and you'll see a lot of Daiwa Stellas or Shimano Stella. You'll see Stellas here, and the reason why guys use them, they're expensive, but they work. They hold up for a long time, and they cast like crazy. On the rods, both of them, on the rod it will say the weight that the rod is able to handle. It's 4 to 8 ounces, or even more, 4 to 10 ounces. Those are the rods you want to get for. The spinning rods, I like 11 foot. For distance, I can cast that thing 3/4 away across easily. And for the casting rod, it's a 9-foot rod. 4 to 8 ounce, that's the key. So you got your 40-pound braid, 30-pound leader, and then your snelled hook on the end, and you got your rods and reels. You're all set up. A lot of guys have these bags that we take with us. That's our tackle box, but they've got a handle on them, and you can fit all kinds of your gear in there. You bring your foul weather gear if you want. I do. I come prepared, and I like to relax, so I bring my chair down, and I bring my little cart to pull all my stuff along with me. So then, now fishing here, finding a spot to fish, there are many maps that are sold. The most popular bait shops around here is Red Top AJ. He'll take care of you down there. They have maps of the canal. On these poles, you'll see poles about every, I think it's 150 feet, and they go the length of the canal on both sides, and you'll see them on that side too. And they have numbers on them, and the purpose of those numbers on the poles, and they're spaced pretty close, they're very accurate, is for navigation purposes. And in case something happens here in the canal, they can locate exactly where the problem is. It's at pole 190 5 or whatever, you know, and the Coast Guard can get here real quick. And but we as fishermen use them to mark good fishing spots. If there's holes or a jut of land that sticks out in the canal, which gives you an advantage for casting out really far at low tides. And there's certain reasons that we keep those. We want to remember where exactly we were, so we use the poles as reference. The bait shops, Canal Bait and Tackle in the Sandwich side, and in Bourne is Red Top on that side. Those are two world-class tackle shops. They have all the gear you need. Put the shameless plug in for them, AJ and Bruce. But they're going to have maps, and the maps will show you all the established named holes that are in the canal. And these have already been known to produce fish. But my theory is you don't have to do that. These are schooling fish. They're moving up and down the canal. One spot is as good as another unless you've got plans otherwise to fish those holes. If you see someone on catching fish, don't pull up right on them. We call that mugging. Don't pull right next to them. Try to just, if you want to go that way and you don't want to work for your own fish, I hate that. I abhor that. I can't stand people that do that. These guys on the bikes, they come around and they're looking for people on fish that are hooked up. They're not fishing. They're looking for people on fish, and then they converge on these people. Not all of them do it by far. Most of them do it the right way. They're looking for breaking fish. But some of them are looking for guys on, and then they'll sit up right next to them. We call that mugging. Don't do that. It's all about respect here. Give everyone plenty of room. If you see someone with fish on and you want to fish that area, just watch which way the current's going and fish. Go up current or down current. Try to figure out where the fish will be shortly, and then you can intercept them. Don't pull up on a guy. It's all about respect here. And you'll have a lot of fun here, and you'll catch fish like you never caught before. And it's just really a great place to fish. So now baiting, this time out I'm using Mac chunks, and so with the circle hooks, these I have a mackerel, and these all cut up for showing you. When you cut your bait, no matter what kind of bait it is, make sure you got a good clean cut here. Don't just rip the skin off, which you're tempted to do, because that skin's going to hold your bait together. And different guys have different preferences when they're bait fishing. Some guys swear by the head. I like this portion of the mackerel with the guts all in it, and about the size that I'm using here is about correct. This is how I do it. Some guys put a half fish on there and a half a pogie or whatever they're using, but these are sufficient. And when baiting with the circle hook, you want to run the hook through. Let me just do it, and it'll be. And so that pretty much covers it. That the basics. If you have any questions, leave your questions, and likes and dislikes, just leave it on there. And hopefully I've answered a few questions with them. Just remember, get those maps. That'll help you get to the established fish spots, or any way you choose. They're schooling fish. They're here, and there's a lot of beauty here, man. This is the reason why this place here. There's wildlife. I've seen all kinds of whales come here, breaching maybe 15 feet in front of me. Ocean sunfish, which are a pelagic fish the size of a Volkswagen, breaching. They're jumping out of the water and splashing. Looks like someone threw a Volkswagen off the bridge. And every kind of shark comes through. Every fish comes through there. And you can, just alone, usually at slack tide, I find that you catch a lot of ground fish like scup, black sea bass, tautog, usually at slack. And then once the current starts picking up, you start getting your stripers again. It's kind of funny how that is, but that's how it is. So it's a worthwhile, world-class fishery here. There's a lot of beauty. You'll see mink running through here every now and then, and all kinds of bird life, fish hawks, and the pesky seagulls. I call them the flying rats, but they're making a living too. And so this is my tutorial on how to bait fish the Cape Cod Canal. I hope I've answered a few questions for you guys as beginners, and maybe there's a few tips in there that everyone can use. But it's worthwhile to come down here if you're a fisherman that wants to catch striped bass, and use your common sense, show respect. Every time I come down here, every single time, every week, I will clean up the place and leave it better than I have found it. Any trash, just pick it up, man, and it's just, you can see it's a beautiful place, and you'll get respect here, and you're gonna get fish, I guarantee it. You know, you're using that bait like that. So with that, my name is Paul K. I hope you like my video. Sorry about the technology of it. One of my first videos on Instructional, and hope I gave you a little bit of Cape Cod Canal wisdom that you can use. And we'll see you next time. Trail Boss out. Just as an addendum added to the Cape Cod Instructional bait fishing video is that the knots, just a few of the knots that I wanted to make sure that you people that are learning how to fish this are aware of. Joining the main line to the leader and the backing to the main line, I like using the Alberto knot, and the reason is you can simply tie a swivel from your main line to your leader, but it will jam on the tip of your rod and probably break the tip eventually. And with the Alberto knot, and other knots, I choose the Alberto because it's very easy to tie in the dark. And that's another thing too. The best fishing by far in the summer, anywhere, all the commercial fishermen everywhere, and it's nighttime in the summer. There's less boat traffic, the fish are less shy during the night, they're acting more natural, and they're just, if you catch 3 fish in the daytime in the summer, the nighttime you will catch 5 times the amount. That is absolute. All the commercial fishermen that fish in the world, it's nighttime. Even in the times of Jesus, when Peter was fishing, it's nighttime fishing that they fish, because that's when the fish are most active. But anyway, the Alberto knot to join the lines, and the reason is so that it can fit through the tip top. When you're not thinking about it and you're reeling in your line to the very tip top, it'll slip right through there. There are other knots, but the Alberto is very easy to tie. Don't be a wimp. Just learn how to tie the knots. It'll serve you for the rest of your life. It's a very simple knot to tie. You can tie it in the dark, and it joins 2 lines together almost, you know, in the 90% range. It's that strong. Unless I tied it wrong over the years, that it's a new knot, but over the years that I have been using it, it's never failed me. And that joins the lines together. The hooks I snell myself. It's just a snell attaching the hook to the leader, and the fisherman's knot, or it's called the improved clinch knot, attaching the leader to the swivel, and the swivel then goes to the leader of the hook is attached to a swivel, and the swivel goes to the leader of the line, and those are the knots. So it's basically, put it in a nutshell, I really wanted to relay it. The strongest knots I found are the improved clinch and the Alberto knot. And the other thing is sinker selection for the canal. On the spinning, you always need less than on the conventional rod, and the spinning in my application that I have here on that setup is 3 ounce that I go with, and it's 5 ounce for the conventional, because with the conventional you're pulling the rod, the line off the reel with the weight of the whatever you're casting, whereas the spinning rod, the line flows off just the way that the reel is built, a lot more easier, so you don't need as much weight. Only circumstance where that changes, it's 3 on spinning and 5 on the conventional, is when the tides are cranking. During the moon and new tides, sometimes this is coming through here 4 or 5 knots. I mean, cranking so fast here in this particular spot that there's usually a standing wave that occurs right there. That's how strong a standing wave, a wave that doesn't move, and it'll sit there for 3/4 of an hour, and that's a great fishing spot too, because that disorientates the bait that gets in there, and the stripers know it, and they hang around those areas. So in those instances where the tide is cranking, you can go up 1 ounce or 2. and it'll hold bottom for you. When you first cast out, every time, whatever way the current's flowing, your line's going to bounce, 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 and then it'll stop, and leave it alone. It's not all snagged up in seaweed. The fish can smell it, and they're going to come up on it, probably usually from up current, and they're going to take it, and your rod's going to double over. And then when you reel in, that's when you pull in all the seaweed. Your line is not fouled out there. It may be sitting in seaweed, but it's not fouled almost 100% of the time. It's sitting on the bottom, attracting fish. That's why bait fishing works the best. So I just thought I'd throw those few tips in there because they're very important, and you'll have a lot of success and fun using those strategies. And I wish you the best of luck, man. It's well worth it. It gets in you, and it's all you want to do after a while. These fish are so strong and beautiful and delicious. And remember, it's a valuable resource. Release as much as it can. Release these guys and gals that you catch, the males and the females that you catch. And it's a lot of fun. All right, trail boss out. So I just want to show the proper way to reel in and avoid snags. I just want to show the proper way to reel it in and avoid snags. And this is how you do it. So you pop it off the bottom and don't stop reeling. Just don't stop. You'll see that, pull your seaweed off. You can see that tide's cranking pretty good. The key is don't stop. Do not stop. Bring it up good. Bait up again. Leave that gap open, always, and just put it back out there. Adjust your drag so it's just coming off. That's about right. Put it back in the spike and you're in business. Just remember, pop it off the bottom and don't stop reeling. That's the key, and you'll get good at it. I go sessions and sessions, nighttime, daytime, without losing a rig. And I'd like to show how not to get snagged when reeling in with the spinning outfit. I showed with the conventional reel. Now I'd like to show with the spinning outfit. The key is don't stop reeling. Pop it off the bottom and just reel like mad. Don't stop. Keep going. This time it didn't have any seaweed on it, but the key is don't stop. Most of the time you're gonna have seaweed on it. It doesn't mean your bait is not be seen by the fish. When it's out there and you haven't touched it, you cast out, it drifted, and then it stopped. The fish can see it. It's not all snagged up in the seaweed 99% of the time. So you bait up and put it back out. Leave that hook gap exposed. Leave it exposed so they can catch on the fish. Put it back out. Now it's going to bounce, bounce, bounce with the current, and then it'll stop. It'll find a home, and that's it. You just wait. But the key to reeling it in with no snags, once again, keep on telling you, it's to take away the terrifyingness of you're going to lose all gear, is pop it off the bottom and just reel like mad. Don't stop. That's the key. And then everything else will fall into place. Caffeine will be your friend. You're out here fishing all the night shift, and then you'll get into the day shift, the energy drinks. Just be careful. But woohoo, they work. So what I wanted to touch on again was the sinker styles. So generally what I use is the bank sinkers, this style, and they bounce along the bottom. They just glide over stuff. There's another style that I'd like to try. Looks very interesting, but this is pretty much it. I pour my own. You can adjust the weights with the tide. You if the tide's really cranking, you go heavier. If the tide's not that cranking, minimum is 3 ounces on the spinning and 5 ounces on the conventional rods, whichever you choose to do. But the bank sinker is the style that I like. It's a very interesting style. It looks like a pencil with a loop on the top, and that's looks very interesting possibilities too, because that'll slide right on through over everything. That's why it's built. It looks just like a pencil with a loop on top, and but I've not experimented with that. Basically, just stick with the bank sinkers. That's gonna work the best in the canal. And the other thing I wanted to touch on was when you catch fish, if you're not going to release them, you're allowed one a day here in Massachusetts within the slot, and you have to kill it. You can't put it on a stringer and then let it be live in the water, because they'll think you're high grading. What that means is you're catching one size fish and then you're leaving it alive on a stringer, and then if a bigger fish comes along, you're going to swap out those fish. But meanwhile, while that fish is on the stringer, you're really, you're hurting it, and its chances for survival aren't going to be that good. So they call that high grading, and you're not supposed to do that. So you got to kill it. So how I do it is you cut the gill, let it bleed out. That pulls the blood out of the meat. Just cut the gill. That will kill the fish. But put it on a stringer, and one end goes in the fish's mouth and the other end gets tied to a rock, and just throw it back in the water. It will bleed out. You'll see the water will get bloody for a few seconds, but that meat's going to be awesome. All the blood's taken out of it. Not that it's a strong tasting fish like a bluefish, the striper, but I bleed them. I like to bleed them, and most guys like to bleed them. And you got a little touch there maybe. When you get a hit on these, that rod doubles over. There's no mistaking it. At slack tide, generally you'll get a lot of ground fish, scup and black sea bass and tautog and whatever else is in there, and the stripers. But I find when the current picks up, by far you're going to get almost all stripers. You'll get other occasional fish, but it's funny how that is. I don't know why that is. When it's slack tide, you get the other species, but stripers love the current. So anyway, bleed the fish, tie them to your stringer, and that's it for you for the day in Massachusetts. You get one fish, and you can keep fishing, but you just got to release everything. That's all. And make sure it's within that slot limit, and you're using circle hooks, and you'll be good to go. And that's it. That's what I wanted to add on. And it's the bank sinkers. Go with those. And that's it. So when to change out on the baits. No matter what kind of bait you're fishing, I generally let it go about 15 minutes. And that's use as good fresh bait as possible. If you can get it, snag it locally, with your own macro jigs or whatever you're using. I get cast nets for other species of fish. but as fresh as you can get it. If not, you can get the frozen baits, like I say, at Red Top or Canal Bait and Tackle. AJ and Bruce will take care of you, and as well as they have everything under the sun for. It's one of the. Those are the two of the most premier bait shops on the East Coast, I would say. Those guys are knowledgeable. I know Montauk and down in Jersey they got a lot of big name, but these in our area it's Red Top and Canal. So fresh bait, and 15 minutes. You bait up, cast it out, let it find its home out there, and let it sit for 15 minutes. That current will draw from far away. It'll just be pulling the juices off that bait, and the fish will just swim up to it, and just that's when you hook up. But 15 minutes, it should be enough time. Pull it in, it'll be washed out. Throw the bait back in the water, the used washed out bait, and you'll produce a nice little chum line. And I've actually done it on really slow days. If you have money, it costs money. You're throwing bait away, but take 2 or 3 mackerel, cut them in chunks, and throw them out there. You will be shocked at how effective that is. They'll swim up current towards that smell, and they just go nuts. The thing is, you don't want to feed them. You want them to take your baited hook. But that's a cool technique too to use. But 15 minutes, and then that's when you should switch out. That's when I do it, and when I'm using any of the cut bait, and pretty effective. And that's it. And which bait to use? Generally, as a rule of thumb, in salt and freshwater, I don't care what kind of fishing it is, you do what they call match the hatch. You look in the water and use your powers of observation and just see what type of bait is in the water. And then if you can procure that bait, that particular bait, or flies, whatever's hatching on a trout stream, or in our case, in the Cape Cod Canal, if there's mackerel or herring or pogies or eels or squid or whatever's running at that particular time, you are going to kill fish because they're zeroed in on that. They're feeding on that. So get that. As a general rule, you can't go wrong just with full-on straight mackerel. I mean, that, it doesn't matter what's in there. If there's mac there, it's got plenty of stinky juice that gets in the current. And some people swear by pogies. I'm a mackerel guy. I think mackerel is the go-to bait when you don't know what's in the canal that they're zeroing on. And even at that, if they're keyed in on squid or rain bait or whatever, I still go with the mackerel too, also in conjunction with the other bait. But fresh, and if not fresh, frozen, go to the bait shops. They'll have the best bait around for you, and they have huge knowledge to let you know which ones to use, which baits to use at that particular time of the year and time of the week and month and so forth. And you will do well by using whatever baits there, present at that particular time. And the other thing I wanted to cover was time. Give it time, man. Like I said at the beginning, if you come down here in 15 minutes and say, "Oh, a lot of guys do that," they cuss it out and they say, "This ain't no good." You got to put time in. That's all. It's like any other fishing, and the right equipment. It's the right equipment. The biggest mistake I see in the canal, always, for newcomers, is they're undergunned. They come down here with their largemouth bass rods, and they'll either get spooled, these are tackle busting fish, and they'll break their rods if they're lucky enough to get something of good size. And you got to get the right equipment. You have to get the right equipment, and the heavy duty rods that can cast far, and reels that are built strong internally so that they can pull these big fish in. That's huge. Come get the right equipment and you'll have no problem with these fish, and you'll have a thrill of a lifetime. I'm telling you, this gets in you. And like I say, you spend time here, you're in nature, you bring a picnic lunch. If you drink, you bring some beers down, and whatever you want to do, just be reasonable. Don't go out of control with the liquor. I don't drink, but some guys come down here and bring your picnic lunch and make a day of it, and it gets in you. If you catch fish, it's all over. The stripers, I mean, the power and the adrenaline you get when you see that rod doubled over, man, you can't control it. It's just, you'll dream about it all winter long. It's totally worth it. Well, that covers bait. See ya. And a word about caring for the reels after you've fished and you caught your fish and you're bragging to everybody and you're showing everybody what you caught and everything. You got to care for your equipment. Some of these reels and rods, as you get into it, will cost a pretty penny. You don't need them, but all your fishing gear should be cared for. If you fished in salt water, you must rinse them off in fresh water when you get home. The salt will corrode the internal stuff. It'll just make junk out of your reels in very short time. You have to simply rinse them gently off in fresh water, the rod and reel, and all your gear, all your terminal tackle that you used. Rinse it off in fresh water, and I like to spray a light coating of WD-40 on the reels and the rod each time, and wipe it off and leave that little protective coating to keep the corrosion off. And these reels and rods will last a lifetime if you take care of them. You have to take care of them, though. That's the thing. The salt water gets in everything. So wash all your rods, all your reels, and all your gear off with fresh water, and it'll last the rest of your life. And every time you go saltwater fishing, that salt is very corrosive. So I'll show you the knots. I hope you can see that. This is your Alberto knot that joins the braid to the leader. And as we move towards the tackle end, that's your sinker slider rig. As the main line runs through the white attachment there, and that is so when the fish takes the bait, he doesn't, when he runs with the bait and swallows it, he doesn't feel the line. And this is your swivel attaching your snelled hook to the main leader, and those are tied with the improved clinch knot or the fisherman's knot. And coming to the end here is your snell, your hook and your snelled knot. That's your snelled knot. And I happen to tie my own, but you can buy these already pre-made from the hook to the swivel, and it's the same thing. They'll have a snell and then a swivel attached to the other end, and those are the knots. Those are the different knots. Also, you're going to get a chance to see some beautiful yachts coming through here while you're fishing. I mean, world-class yachts that come through here are absolutely stunning, low and blacked out, 130 feet long with helicopters on them. Absolutely stunning. There's commercial cargo ships that come through. There's little putt-putt small boats of all sizes and shapes, and tall-masted schooners and sailboats and every kind of craft. It's beautiful while you're fishing here. It's a spectacular place to fish, you know, and it's of course world-class fishery because it's a funnel connecting the east to the west, not having to go around the Cape Cod arm from Buzzards Bay to Cape Cod Bay, Buzzards Bay being in this direction and Cape Cod Bay being in that direction. And that's why ships use it too. It saves a lot of mileage and hazards, because the approach to Boston Harbor is a lot of rocky ground, and over the centuries there's hundreds and hundreds of shipwrecks all along through there. So this solves a lot of problems. And but the ships, if you like watching nautical craft coming through here, are spectacular. You know, I mean, you'll see 8 o'clock in the morning, these low blacked out yachts with women sitting on the deck with straw hats on, drinking wine at 8 o'clock in the morning. Hey, it's a tough job. Somebody's got to do it. But I'm telling you, it's common. And I wonder who owns these boats, you know, those type of yachts, you know, Don Vito Corleone, or Vito Andolini. But, you know, you get to say, oh, Sappington, draw my bath. They're quite incredible and very impressive. You'll never forget them when you see them. Same with the military ships. They come through too. They're pretty impressive too. I wouldn't want to mess with them. they're badass things to see. But that's the little cut on knots. Hopefully I'll show you the proper way to land a fish. Black sea bass, one of the best eating fishes around. See how that hook cut him right in the side of the mouth. That's just what you want. And I'm not going to eat this fish. So this is how they come. again, that circle hook right on the edge there. Awesome. Pop them out. That's it. Nice little fish. Not quite keeper. And this is what I call, I guess, my Canal Cadillac. It's got all my gear rigged up in it, and this is basically what I call my, I don't know, Canal Cadillac. It's got all my gear on it. I can move it with 2 fingers. It's basically, before luggage had wheels, everyone transported their luggage on these things. They strapped them in. People throw them away now. If you see them in the trash or at the Morgan Memorial, pick them up for $1. They throw them away, and they're just the greatest thing. I grab it with 2 fingers. I can move all my gear. Just pull it along. People come up with different ideas. They get Cabela's and Bass Pro makes a nice wagon, and a couple $100 for that. But this works out for me perfect, and gets all my gear in there. It's handy, it's small, folds up nice, and the price is absolutely right. It's free. So Canal Caddies, figure out a way to get your gear down here.